Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human SOS Show, episode 105. Rocking long. We've working diligently towards our third year. I appreciate y'all joining us today, and remind you, if you would, to type in the comments where you're joining from. And as always, we want to hear your thoughts and comments as your value is remarkable in making our show be a good one. So, Anton, you want to kick off our topic for today?
I think we've only skipped one week, right? Or maybe was it two? I think two.
I think there might have been two. Yeah.
Okay, so in two episodes, then it'll be start of the third year. That's cool. Today we're going to talk about narcissism. Or dealing with narcissists and just the concept in general. As you know, Human SOS, we just discuss human experience. We talk about stress and burdens people that people have to face at home, in life, at work. But ultimately, we focus on the state of a human being, right? Not what we are. A lot of times you hear podcasts and, different places talk about what we do, what we are. A lot of times we focus on how we are, the actual state of our being. And today, as Kevin already mentioned, we're going to discuss narcissism. I think it's a big source of stress for individuals. It's a big source of stress for teams, from leadership. It's a big source for stress for families, from personal life. It's all around us, and just get a different take on it from me and Kev, and maybe also hopefully include the audience and have you talk to us about what you think a narcissist is. Like, how do you see a narcissist? So Kev, let's start out with you. I'll pose that question to you and then ask you, what do you see a narcissist be like? What's a narcissist to you?
Let me first shout out to a couple of folks. Welcome, Rick and Atif. Always good to see you guys with us. Look forward to hearing your thoughts. Narcissist. For me, it's ego on a very extreme. And to a point, I know that there's even some psychological diagnoses related to narcissism. But at the end of the day, it's somebody that is so self-centered and self-absorbed that they do not think about others. Considering others is just not somehow a part of their makeup, and it's hard for me to conceive of that being uncontrollable. But yet, I've not been there, not experienced it, but I know that it because I have been around narcissists. I know some people that have actually been diagnosed as narcissists, and it's a tough thing to deal with, and it really is. And I don't know if there is any kind of medicinal intervention, or if it's purely on a therapeutic counseling kind of realm, but it's hard to be around them. I have to say that, because not only do they not take others into account, but quite often their behaviors are in such a way as to put others down and make others feel less than by their very, very behaviors and attitudes. So that's kind of my experience with it anyway. What about you?
I've talked about this already, that a narcissist to me is a mentally ill person. Somebody that has an incredibly fragile self-esteem. These are the kind of people that have to typically take the route of bringing people down around them in order to elevate themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because the other aspect, I think narcissists, and this may be a reach, but I don't think narcissists possess a growth mindset. I think that's why they take that route of bringing others down instead of elevating themselves, because they think, I am who I am, and if people discover it, it's going to be bad. So I have to bring everybody else down. But it's really just somebody that, we look at him as egotistical. It's true. We look at him as somebody that's seeking power, always trying to boast, always trying to, monopolize conversations. That's another thing we'll always see narcissists do, is no matter what the conversation is, they'll bring it back to themselves and kind of put themselves at the center of that conversation. And it's just like people at some point just like, why talk to you? Like, why discuss anything with you? Because you can't hear me out. And I think that's another thing, is narcissists don't possess empathy. They struggle in that area, and just with my experience. But ultimately, I think that for me, it's always coming back to something's broken with them. Something, whether it be a broken childhood, whether it be something along the path went wrong, and now they're exhibiting these behaviors that we've all kind of mentioned. And ultimately, we have to deal with them. We have to deal with them all the time. We have to work with them. We have to live with them sometimes. We have to, not necessarily choose to be friends with them, but sometimes they're in our friend circles, because I don't think a lot of people love being friends with narcissists. You just have them around because they're a friend of a friend, or they're an acquaintance of a friend, or, a brother of a friend, or whatever it may be. But we need to make sure that we guard ourselves. Narcissists, they will feed off people that are givers. That's kind of my experience. They will, they'll try to take advantage of people that are very easy targets. So I think Atif talked about this a few weeks ago, where he's doing the right things, he's leading the way that he should be leading, but people around him, some of these narcissists are taking advantage of that, and that's tough, because it kind of makes you like want to go in a different direction, want to like not be so susceptible to their attacks. But then does that make it harder for you to do the things that you really want to do, to lead the way that you want to lead? And that's tough. So we need to learn how to guard ourselves.
Let me give some shout outs here. Welcome, Marius and Sina. Rob, good to see you, my friend. And Ann, glad to have you. Yeah, you finally made it. I know Ann's been wanting to join for a while. A couple of comments. I get it, Marius, that pride always comes before a fall. But I have to agree with Anton, though. I think part of the challenge is that someone that is truly a narcissist is it's not that they even grasp it. I don't think. I think they're so broken or short-circuited that they don't even realize that their behaviors are like they are. And I think that's a real challenge. And yes, unfortunately, we have to interact with them. I'd be curious to know if there's anyone that has never encountered such. Rob makes a comment. He says narcissists don't always bring others down around them. They can also manipulate those around them quite skillfully, unless you know what to look for. A very dangerous personality type for sure, perhaps the most dangerous. They have no empathy. So Rob's right there with your comment, Anton. And it's a challenge. And I think what you were just talking about, Anton, is how do we are not likely going to affect a change in them. So our best response is how to respond well without getting pulled into what they're about, including, as Rob mentioned, the manipulation. And so I think we need to kind of explore, how do we narcissist proof ourselves so that we don't but get pulled in or try, so that we don't have to try to avoid them also. I mean, there's sometimes we just say, I just can't be around them. But I think there's ways to be effective in relating to them without getting pulled into it. What do you think?
Absolutely. To me, this is just maybe a very strange way of looking at it, but when I see a narcissist in action, I look at a child. I look at a child and I feel that this child was either spoiled or deprived, right?
Mm,
It's one of the two things somewhere, maybe it's their parents, maybe they were fostered, who knows? And they were either made the center of the universe, like as an only child
mm,
sometimes. And I'm not saying this is always the case, but I look at it as they were either really spoiled to where they were made to believe that they're the greatest thing on earth because that's how they were raised. Or
mm,
on the other hand, they had a really rough childhood, um, where they were deprived of love, they were deprived of recognition, they were deprived of parents being present in their
mm,
lives. So they're playing catch up one way or another. I try to remove myself from like personally taking on feelings from them because they don't know any better, right?
mm.
It's kind of like I'm not going to get perfect world, right? I can get mad at my kids too. Like let's get real here.
Yeah.
But I try to not to as much as I can because some of the stuff they just don't understand, and that's what I try to do. So that's kind of psychologically guarding myself, and I think that's the easier one. I think the
Mm,
tougher one is professionally guarding ourselves, right?
mm,
Making sure that we are not allowing narcissists to take credit for everything that we do, making sure that they're not going to talk us down to elevate their own career up. And in that case, it's building relationships with people around us, right? So if there's a narcissistic boss that I have, I'm going to make sure that I do my best to build relationship with a level up from them and
mm,
maybe laterally, right? So with their peers and maybe their superiors. So that way the only lens that my company has on me is not through the narcissistic eyes, right?
mm.
Because we don't know what's going to happen. And if all people know about us is what this leader, this person, I don't want to say the word leader, manager is saying about us, then it's going to put our career in danger, put our job in danger. So I would say those kind of relationships are going to be key for people to know, like, you know what? I don't see Anton doing that because I actually have a relationship with him. Where
Mm.
is this coming from? And let me talk to them versus the boss just saying, this is what Anton did. Well, I don't know any better. It is what it is.
Yeah. Anne makes a couple of comments. Yes, narcissists definitely feed off of people that are givers and they can completely drain you, no doubt. She also goes on to make an observation that what bugs me is that the word narcissist is so overused. I've only met one true narcissist in my life. The manipulation is unexplainable. And welcome, Aman and Zaid. Glad to have you. And I'm with you there. I think we see people practicing or having selfish behavior, and we want to call them a narcissist. And the I don't think that is the case. I think narcissism, as Anton said earlier, he that it's a short circuit. It's a problem, a real issue, medically, psychologically there, and it can be a real challenge. Let's see. Atif makes a comment. He says research shows that leaders take credit for good company performance and attribute poor performance to environmental factors over which they have no control, to predecessors, to macroeconomic issues. Is this narcissism? In individualistic cultures like the US and Pakistan, leaders are usually larger than life, and hero worship is also widespread. I've rarely seen leaders in political sphere or in corporate circle who are not in the habit of self projection and self promotion, leadership, and whoops, let me, it trails off. Let me get this set. Leadership, excuse me, I'll get there. Leadership and narcissism is our world, in our world, go together. Uh, I can see where you would make that attribution, and what you're describing, in my opinion, in large part, isn't true narcissism. Is it very ego-centered and self-centered? I would say so. And it, culture and all can be a factor in that. I think, though, unfortunately, the idea of leadership, and I may step into a problem here, but people that are behaving like you describe, Atif, in my book, aren't leaders at all. They are in a role of a leader or a manager or boss, but they aren't leaders, because a true leader um, doesn't behave that way. In fact, a true leader is what the term I use is servant leadership. But it is a problem of self-projection and a lot of other things going on especially in work environments. And yes, some of these people get put on a pedestal that, to a point, I would even suggest that, to use an old term, that we start into idolatry and idol worship. And so, yeah, I appreciate that, but I'm not sure that that's automatically a narcissist. I think these are people that just haven't learned any better, and they just, as Maria said, they'll get to experience the truth that pride goes before the fall. Life will humble most everyone, and in fact, in that vein, I would suggest that the difference is that when life humbles most people, they will begin to at least learn and take away from it, and actually hopefully get a little less ego and so on. But I'm not sure that in those cases that narcissists do that. I would say that in cases of a true narcissist, they will actually become angry and bitter, because again, they're part of the short circuit involved is they just don't see it. The others of us can see it, but I don't believe that they can. Anton, your perspective on that?
So tying three comments together, where Anne said narcissist is an overused term. She also asked if I think that true narcissists are not just a product of their environment, but it's also a true illness. And then Atif's comment, right? So this is an example of where we overuse the term narcissist. There's people that have narcissistic tendencies, right? They may act in similar ways that a narcissist would act. Doesn't necessarily mean they are a true narcissist, because to answer Anne's questions, I do believe that a narcissist is a mental disorder. I believe that there is some chemical wiring that's happening in the brain, or things got changed at some point that impacted the brain, that is causing these people to be a narcissist. And that's why I started with narcissists being ill. We have to look at it as this is a sick person. Doesn't mean that it's okay. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it any easier on us to deal with them. But when we come from a standpoint of them being a sick person, I think it makes it easier to just get through situations with them sometimes, just for our own, stress, for our own peace of mind, versus look at it, because a lot of times they'll make us feel like something's wrong with us. Right. But if we see that we know that they're actually sick, that's just to be expected. It's the other thing about narcissism is oftentimes people with borderline personality disorder, BPD, they have traits of a narcissist. There's some things out there, forget the stat, but I want to say that around 40%, if I remember correctly, people with borderline personality disorder have very narcissistic tendencies. And it's interesting, when my therapist, she dealt with somebody with BPD very closely, and my therapist told me, it's a really bad way of looking at it, but she says, this person is so sick, but their inside, their mind is always in agony. It's like they're always on fire. And they try to spread that fire everywhere else in their world in order to even things out and balance things out. And they act very irrationally oftentimes. And so that's some of that, where we can see oh, this person's narcissist just because they did things like a narcissist would. Doesn't necessarily mean they're a full-on narcissist.
Welcome, Wanda. Glad to have you with us. Also, Suzette, good to see you. And Sikandar, if I mispronounce your name, please let me know. It's, I think our key is to understand what we're dealing with. And I think that being aware, that's just like being aware of people that potentially are suicidal. And in that we just have to have understanding of it. And in case we do encounter someone, at that point, we should also have some way prepared in our minds to begin to address it. And the key thing, though, is just because someone is demonstrating selfish behaviors and ego and things like that doesn't make them narcissist. Again, if you've never encountered, or if you've ever encountered someone that is a true narcissist, it is just, it's almost tangible. How about that? Palpable was the word I was looking for. And it's really different, unique, and in some ways a little bit strange. So I just encourage you to learn and be aware. And it's interesting because we all have a tendency at times to demonstrate those behaviors ourselves. And let me explain what I mean by that is that quite often we're in a defensive posture in relationships, and it's born out of our own struggles and our own lack of confidence in ourselves, and recognizing and appreciating who we are. And so we struggle, and we will behave in some ways because we feel the need to defend ourselves. And what's real interesting is, Anton, you've probably more knowledgeable on this than I am, but a narcissist is somebody that feels mentally, emotionally, they have to defend themselves almost to the death, to that extreme, because to not do that, then their whole existence becomes a problem for them. Is that a fair?
Absolutely.
View, or?
I would agree.
So what I like to think about in this is that the danger for us is getting pulled into their behaviors, their world. And that's the last thing we want to do. And I think one way to avoid that is to avoid narcissists. And fortunately, I think many of us can do that, can avoid them, because they're not a high percentage of the population. I think the other, though, is that we have to be prepared in having confidence in ourselves and in who we are, who we're created to be, and where our value is found. I know I get to be a bit of a broken record over this, but if I recognize the value that I have by my creator, and it's intrinsic, and nobody can change that value, that changes a lot for me, because then I can focus on addressing issues and not address people, if you will. Let me catch up on a few comments here. Wanda offers that see that as a lack of emotional intelligence. It's certainly a part of it. The difference is a narcissist doesn't even conceive of what emotional intelligence is. Their system is short-circuited and really don't know that they're even that way. Let's see. Anne makes a comment. I have one family member with borderline personality disorder, and it's different than any other psychological disorder that I've seen. It's also very hard to diagnose. What do you think about it, Anne Hahn?
No, absolutely. It is. It's misdiagnosed very often. It is hard to diagnose, but it's actually way more prevalent than we realize. And I think that trauma causes that a lot. And I think in our world, there's more and more trauma happening every day, and different types of trauma. Some trauma is one intense event. Some trauma is a consistent repetitiveness of small similar events that accumulate over time. And that's why we talk about stress on the show and things like that, because too much stress can cause trauma, even though you wouldn't consider it to be a traumatic event in itself. So no, I definitely agree. And if you do have a person with BPD in your life, I mean, it's tough to deal with as a narcissist. It's just hidden. A lot of times it's hidden. A lot of times people with BPD, they don't show it to everybody. They only take it out on their loved ones, like people that are the closest to them. It's crazy, like how that works out. Is usually the victims of people that have BPD are the people that are the closest to them, the people that care about them the most, the people that they know they can, unload their rage on, unload that internal fire on, and they know that they won't leave them.
Welcome to. Okay, it must be Kashimbo from Tanzania, or Seaphora. I can't figure that one out, but welcome. And Daniel, glad to have you with us. Let's see here. I want to get back and make sure. ATIF makes a comment. Companies also tend to promote narcissists as leaders because they get results. People who are humble are usually taken for granted, even by their team. It's sad but true. There is a definite issue that someone that is narcissist, because they're so focused and self-centered, that they can be highly productive, and that is sometimes rewarded in behaviors in a company. That is without a doubt. As far as humble people getting taken advantage of, I think there is a missing component that we have to address in regards to humility to overcome that, because it does happen. In fact, going back to comment from Marius that applies here, is meekness is power and control, with empathy, not weakness. And the more we understand that and accept that ourselves, then we make a difference. Part of the problem is that we quite often don't see humility and meekness ourselves as a strength. And when you find someone that is truly humble and living meekly, but they're doing it from a depth of character and spiritual strength, they are they are a force to be reckoned with, but they never demand that you reckon with them. It's real important, though, to recognize the difference and accept it and work within it. And Seaphora makes a comment, think it's because we don't pay attention to issues we tend to ignore, and that has a big impact. I think that I don't know that ignoring a narcissist is an option. Anton, what do you think? Can we just simply ignore them and go on?
I mean, for ignoring depends on what the situation is. I mean, you can't ignore them if it's hurting somebody else, right? If you're a leader on your team, or not even a leader, like, and you're seeing that a narcissist is causing harm to somebody else, you may want to step in and try to address the situation. But at the same time, you may not be in a mental space to be able to do that, or you will become the target. It's a tough one to say. I mean, I don't want to tell people put yourself in harm's way and try to defend everybody. That's a perfect world. I mean, pick your battles. But if certain things that they're doing, especially if it's just with you, and that's what I'm saying, come back to that view of a sick child, right? And maybe it makes it easier to just let something slide and understand that they're just broken. They're actually hurting on the inside. That's the reality. Some of these successful individuals, Atif says that people promote narcissists and politicians are narcissists. They're not happy. They have positions of power, they have money, but they don't have satisfaction. That's something that is lacking from these folks for the most part. Or if they have satisfaction, it's momentary.
We both need some more coffee or something this morning, Anton.
Something. But yeah, it's for a split second, and then it's on to still feeling like, inside there's just something that's not enough, something that has to feed that constant thirst. But it's somebody said, Mario said, we must have empathy for those that are narcissistic as well. Absolutely. I mean, just remember, like, they are not okay. They're not. Like, it's bottom line, doesn't mean that what they do is right. But for you to deal with it easier, remember, they're not okay.
Well, and my comment that I don't think just simply ignoring them is an option. If you ever get around a true narcissist, they're going to elicit a response. Okay. And if walking away is considered ignoring, okay, I'll buy that. But you can't just be around them and for much time and not make some kind of a choice to behave, act, change something, is my thought. And that's why, if you're not in a position to interact with them in a healthy fashion, you need to separate yourself from the situation, if at all possible. I would even go so far as, if you get in a situation and you are in a team or have a boss that is truly a narcissist, that to me may be worth considering changing jobs, changing teams, something, because dealing with those people, because they're sick, again, I'm not casting aspersions on them. And what came to my mind is an example. We think that, we think, well, why don't they just stop or something? But for example, if you have a medical problem with a skin disease that causes you to want to itch, and if you can imagine that, how you feel when you have that, I've had poison ivy and other things at times, and the urge to scratch, even though we know that it's going to create other problems, but that's kind of mentally, emotionally what a true narcissist is going through. They just simply can't control it, don't understand it, and therefore they react accordingly.
I just want to still looking at Atif's comment about tending to promote narcissists, and most politicians have narcissistic tendencies, unfortunately. Yeah. And there's some truth to, you have to be at least partially narcissistic to think that, hey, I can step in and grasp all this attention because I'm worthy of it. Like, it's a tough one, but to the point of them being promoted to leaders and maybe being successful and being able to create certain results, it's depending on what stage of the team we're talking about. Right? Like, what is it? Forming, storming, norming, performing, Tuckman's model. When we look at it, maybe in the forming and maybe a little bit in a storming phase, not in the norming and performing. So the reality is, if most of these companies or these governments, our governments are always in a forming stage. If you don't realize that, because we're never really actually doing anything. One politician comes in for 4 to 8 years, sets a path. We try to accomplish some small things, but in reality, we've mentioned this before, they're just trying to get reelected. We're never really getting to performing. Our government's so far away from performing, it's not even funny. Many companies are as well. They just don't realize potential. Some of these board members that are promoting these leaders, or some of these C-level executives that are promoting these leaders, they're not realizing what the true potential of that team is. They're just trying to hit a small benchmark that they had based on previous performance or whatever it may be. And a narcissist usually is a good driver because they don't have empathy. They're asking for results at any cost. So at the cost of people's, productivity, people's happiness, people's state of being, at the cost of high turnover, they're getting to that mark that the board or the C-level executives wanted them to get to, without ever realizing that that mark is actually a fraction of what that team can do if they actually have a good empathetic leader that leads the right way.
Let's see. Oh, welcome, Ed Mario. I don't think I welcomed Ed Mario. Glad to have you as always. Interesting comment made by Daniel was, I assume you're talking about referencing narcissism, Adolf Hitler on steroids. I believe that there is some body of thought out there that Adolf Hitler may be the poster child for narcissism, because a lot of evidence that he just simply did not completely understand it. In fact, another term, if you encounter a true narcissist, is a God complex. I mean, to the point that, again, it's hard to describe. If you encounter somebody that is a true narcissist for the first time, then it brings in perspective people that are just being self-centered and egotistical. Very different. Let's see. Rick asks a question. Can this be a product of a bad childhood with poor role models? Certainly, that can be part of it. But again, I believe we're talking extremes and types of things that many people would actually break under and even succumb physically to death over. But for some reason, these folks survive it, but the wiring is so short-circuited, it's remarkable. So yes, I think it could be a factor and certainly a part of it, but it's more than just having, a bad childhood or a, not ideal childhood or what have you. Thoughts on that one, Anton?
I know you're saying it can be extreme. I don't necessarily fully agree. I think it can be, each brain is unique and each brain is different. Okay. Each human experience is different. It's kind of like we talk about our stress capacity in our bucket, right? Like, people's buckets are different in size. So what one person's experience made them get through it and be like, okay, it is what it is. The other person's, their brain could have become broken and it caused them to do that. So I think it's 100%. I wouldn't say 100%. I think there's our adolescent years, whether it be due to parenting, due to friends, due to school, due to whatever high levels of influence around us, can cause us to become narcissists, right? Imagine being part of a group. Like a little story. I grew up in Ukraine, and there most of us lived in these big apartment complexes. And your group of friends lived within that big building. You all kind of hung out, you all did things. So that I could have had somewhat normal parents, I could have had all of the normal things. But if that group of friends mistreated me, which I've seen happen often, all the time, and picked on me and made me feel inferior all the time, I couldn't escape it no matter where I went, because we were secluded to this group of friends for the most part, right? And that could have materialized me into a narcissist. So there's lots of different things, but I think it does come from our adolescent years.
Well, maybe a way to look at it is, a lot of studies on alcoholism and how what will trigger alcoholism is really not well understood. For some people, one drink of alcohol can cause them to become alcoholic. Other people, it could take years of drinking, but there are triggers that happen. And so I guess it is fair to say that, and I would agree that, we don't know. We can't define it as somebody has to have been terribly abused, or it could be one singular defining issue that occurs that tips somebody. So yeah, I have to agree with you, Anton. I think that's a better way of looking at it. Let's see, Suzette. Societies embrace narcissistic leaders, managers, board members to keep the management of things alive, which is destroying the fabric of these very businesses and the people who reside within and people they are to serve. Um, yeah, I think that the narcissistic behaviors uh, are certainly a factor in choices like that. The one caution I still would offer is I'm not sure that many people are truly narcissistic. They may be very selfish, very egotistical, but I'm not sure that just because you demonstrate narcissistic behaviors doesn't mean that you are a narcissist. And finding that line and understanding it is a challenge. Anton, what do you think about that one?
Say that again. Sorry.
I was just saying that Suzette's comment about the promotion of narcissists and in leadership roles and things like that, that I would offer a caution that these people aren't, just because they demonstrate some narcissistic behavior, selfishness and things, doesn't make them narcissist. And again, my caution is be careful, because a narcissist is not the same as someone that has selfish tendencies. It is unique.
No, definitely. We definitely talked about that, and I would agree 100%. One thing the reason I got sidetracked, I was looking up an article, and it's a newer thing, at least for me. I haven't heard about this, but covert narcissism. It's where people don't really display the normal narcissistic behaviors on the outside, similar on the inside, but they are how they experience grandiosity is different, right? They are not the kind to project it outward. They seem shy. They seem kind of reserved. They are very passive aggressive. Narcissists oftentimes are not necessarily passive aggressive. They're very direct, where covert narcissists may be a lot more passive aggressive in nature. They hold grudges very badly because, but they don't make them known. So that's just something for folks. If you want to do some research, I was looking it up. There's actually a good amount of information online, but yeah, there is such thing as covert narcissism.
Well, and okay, I'll throw out a little bit of a curveball here. May prove to be interesting. Is there a relationship between narcissism and sociopathy? And wondering, because what you just described, the covert narcissist, my mind went, okay, to me, you're describing a classic sociopath, because these are people to the outside world that seem even model citizens and so on. And then we discover that these people were ruthless killers. And so just a thought, could there be a connection there in those two terms?
Our brain is so complex, man. Like it's for sure there could be a connection. And I just think we still know so little about our brain. That's the reality. And like how these things all tie together and how they all work and how they impact our daily existence. It's really crazy. I'm looking at Anne's comment about it's 641. Yeah, that one. I've had issues with codependency, and a couple of years ago, I fell into a relationship with a true narcissist. That combination was horrible. I believed everything they said, and trying to make them happy was impossible. Everyone on the outside could see, but I was too close. I have a great testimony out of that, though. Oh boy, I can relate with that. I have some codependency issues myself. I've gone to therapy for it and things like that. I'll be open about it. I think for me, it was losing my dad at an early age that probably brought that on, and kind of raising myself as a kid, when I was growing up. But it is so true. This is the easiest target for a narcissist and also folks with BPD. We are like just like a power plant for them. You know, they attach, they leech onto us, and usually we are the worst targets of it all. Remember when I said like the people that are closest to some of those folks are the biggest targets for them. The people that are closest to them and also have codependency issues, that are constantly looking for gratification, that are constantly looking for validation from them, they can control us like this, right? And they can just play us like a 6-string guitar, because they know exactly how to give us enough to pull us back when we're pulling away, and just keep us in that perpetual cycle. It is a very, very true thing.
Yeah, and when we started talking about this, I've actually encountered a narcissist, and it was in a situation, family-related situation, and I'm pretty astute and very blessed to have a level of confidence, not in me, but in who I've been created, enough that I'm generally not victim to some of these things. But this person, without my, I wasn't on guard sufficiently with this person, and they almost pulled me into their world out of reaction. Because, and what's scary is that in this case, my reaction was for the right reason, and even justified, but to have given into that would have put me in a position to create more problems for myself. And in fact, my reaction was in defense of other family, and so good good rationale for it, good purpose, but bad choice, because in this case, getting into that situation with a narcissist is rarely a good thing. Rarely, most times we're not able to change other people. We can affect them by example and by showing love and compassion and things like that. But most times we can't change them. When you're dealing with a narcissist, if you're going in with the mindset, well, I'll help them change, run the other way. Unless you're qualified and they're willing to be counseled, and you just need to run the other way in that case. Because if you go in with the effort and thought, I'm going to help them get better, you're going to be in a codependent situation so quickly, it's not even funny. So yeah, just be very cautious. Let's see. Trying to look through here. I don't want to not share comments, but we've got to watch our time and be selective. Let's see. Okay. We may have our topic for next week, Anton. Marius says maybe a follow-up conversation would be on weakness and self-confidence. Certainly related to what we're talking about. What do you think?
I need a little more clarity. What do you mean, unless you get it, Kev?
I think just talking about how to grow in self-confidence is the way I'm taking it, and how to become self-confident, because and again, using the term carefully, that is part of a way to relate well to a narcissist.
Sure. I'm in. I love love as always, Marius. Thank you. I love when audience give us our topic instead of us having to come up with what you want to hear. So far, I think this is would be like a 4th week in a row that we've had audience provide a topic. I love it.
Let's see here. I want to make sure. It seems like I'm missing something. Ed Mario makes an observation that's interesting. It says a person with high self-esteem produces for himself an inner strength so powerful that it makes him genuinely master of himself, to the point of mastering his demons. These will continue to exist. However, their obscure attempts to convince us to accept and live with failure will be reduced to their true insignificance. I think my takeaway from that, Ed and Mario, is that part of what we all need to do. And this is part of being in healthy relationships, period. And also related to managing stress is that we've got to be introspective. We have to be intentional about being introspective, because that's where we're going to find those places where we can be healthy regardless of what's going on around us. And I think ultimately that's the goal we're after, is the more healthy we are, the less susceptible we are to unhealthy people. And I would even go so far as to say that's physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Anton, what do you think?
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I'm just still looking at Marius's comment. I'm looking at meekness. What's meekness? This is like my English second language situation.
Meekness, the best description or definition that I've ever heard, meekness is power under control. The people that I've known that are truly meek have the capability to do physically, mentally, emotionally, do things that would blow most people away. But they're most of the time, they're the quietest, most almost obscure people around. But one of the defining things about someone that's truly meek is when they walk in the room, they'll never say a word, but you feel their presence. So meekness, like I said, power under control. And it's almost sometimes it seems like an oxymoron.
Well, now I'm excited for next week, because I'm going to learn some from the audience too. I'm going to do some research.
Let's see here. And welcome, Sherry. Glad to have you. Trying to remember if you've joined us before, but anyway, glad to have you. And let's see here. Codependency. Wow, we may have several topics for a few shows here, Anton, to deal with.
That one's tough. Sure, I'm happy to talk about it from like my experience of it and the things that I've done myself. That's like, bordering area that we can't really touch. It's scope of practice. It's something that I've always looked at as a coach. And that is more advanced stuff that like I'm careful to not cross into like therapy conversations, because these folks are clinically trained to do that. But we can always discuss from a personal standpoint. Like I've dealt with it. I still deal with it. It's not something I will ever get rid of, but I'd be happy to maybe in the future we discuss it from that standpoint.
And Marius clarifies your ask about what is meekness. He says the opposite of a narcissist. And yeah, I like that. It is really almost the antithesis to being narcissist. And narcissistic behavior, the concept of what drives it, and narcissists are broken. It's a truly medical, mental, psychological issue that they're broken. And Anton, you mentioned it maybe even some brain chemistry issues as part of that. So there's not one driver to a narcissist. There's one common problem in it, that they're broken. And quite often they have no clue that they're broken. They think that they are behaving healthy, normal. And, it's like an alcoholic. Many alcoholics don't know that they're alcoholics. They just think they enjoy drinking. And so, let's see. Wow, this is okay. Zaid has a question. Why don't we call it tactical Machiavellian instead of codependent? I'll let you jump on that one, Anton. You
one of those things that's over my head. I'm like,
I was going to say,
I read it earlier. I was like, tactical Machiavellian instead of codependent. That I don't see the connections. You might have to further elaborate.
Yeah, but it took me a long time to grasp the concept of codependence, because I've not been in any extreme situations of codependency. I think any relationship on some level is codependent. Whether it moves to an unhealthy state is a different question that comes to mind. Let's see. Marius kind of adding a little bit of fuel to the fire about self-confidence and associating meekness and self-confidence. And I believe that, again, true self-confidence involves a part of meekness, because true self-confidence is also born out of humility, not ego. And that's kind of, again, seems a bit antithetical to our thinking. But at the end of the day, more we learn about this, and guys, I know that, and guys and gals, sorry, I use guys as a generic term. I realize sometimes I'm not careful. I might hurt somebody's feelings. But anyway, and I don't mean to, again, beat a drum, but the assessment that Anton and I and the other of our team at the time developed actually will help explore some of these elements for us, because a lot of these elements are also stress related items and will produce stress. So I know I'm sounding like I'm saying we've got a fix all test for everybody. It's not that, but it does give you good insight into what's going on with the root causes, because a lot of what we see and we react to are symptoms. And kind of bringing us back around our original topic of narcissism, when we contextualize it, first of all, understanding that narcissism's overused, and just because somebody behaves selfishly, self-centered, whatever, does not make them a narcissist. It may make them a lot of things that are unpleasant, but they're not narcissists. Second of all, narcissists are truly sick people, medically sick people. And when we understand that, if nothing else, just like if we go back to the itchy skin example, if we see somebody itching to the point they're harming themselves, we're not going to get mad at them. We're not going to react in that way. We're going to have empathy. We're going to even have sympathy and approach it in that fashion. And when we do that, we take our any self-centered tendencies out of it, because then we're going, wow, this person's got a problem. And so it at least keeps us from reacting in ways we shouldn't, and learning to respond. And so contextualize people, and it's a good practice anyway, but it is especially important for dealing with a narcissist. And so Anton, as we're winding down, welcome, Mary. Glad to have you with us as always.
Sherry says spot on. Stress is the root cause for these and many behaviors. And that's ultimately why Kev and I focus so much on stress, and just in a very different way, right? Yeah. Stress is just such a broader thing than what we in our society understand, and the issue behind it, and why we keep preaching human SOS, why we want, if you don't follow our hashtag human SOS, please do follow human SOS. Share it yourself. We don't want this to be our thing. We want it to be a thing that moves society in a better direction when it comes down to stress management and just understanding of stress. Because the biggest problem to me, or one of the biggest problems to me, is that many of these symptoms are happening, but we don't attribute stress as a cause or a trigger for it. So we keep doing things that could get better, that we could get better with, but they just keep getting worse. They keep getting worse, and we keep doing other things to try to fix them, or, more like, I look at it always like a tree, right? A tree has leaves, a tree has branches, and a tree has roots. We keep treating symptoms. We keep focusing on the leaves. Maybe if we're lucky, we're focusing on the branches. But very rarely, with a lot of our societal problems, are we going to the root of that tree to address the sickness, to address the problem all the way at its core, so that way everything above it gets better.
indeed. So much of our own behaviors, and part of the value of an assessment, part of the value of coaching is to be an outside source to go beyond looking at the leaves and the branches, go down to the roots and figure it out. And that's where we get healthier in general as human beings, is finding the roots. Stop treating the symptoms. I know our medical community in many ways puts Band-Aids on things and treats symptoms. But we can avoid doing that. And Sherry, how do you get involved in Human SOS? Follow our hashtag, take the assessment. If you want to help us spread the word about the concepts, that's a good one. And by being here and promoting our podcast, certainly. And one other thing is that Anton and I, and we can pull together a team of other folks, are prepared and desirous to take this into organizations, because getting into the organizations, helping them work with their organizational culture and recognizing the needs, especially the stress areas, is helpful. So a reference to an organization that might benefit from the Human SOS principles and movement would be great. So thanks for asking the question. I appreciate that. So be aware.
Hold on. What's your book about, Sherry? I'm just looking at your profile right now. Perhaps we can, if there's synergies, we also invite people on our show, from time to time as well. If there is what we talk about is similar to things that you talk about, or there's a connection, maybe get involved that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Sherry's got a good book. I actually got to read part of it early on, and it's worth the read. So check out Sherry's book. Well, thanks everyone. Narcissism, not necessarily a pleasant topic, but something that we do well to be aware. And so next week we'll talk about in and around concepts of self-confidence. How about that, Anton? Is that kind of
good? Love it.
And I think we can learn some things together. So thanks everyone. Hey, we'll be back next Tuesday morning. Been here for 104 other times, and so we'll keep it rolling. Look forward to you being here, be a part with us. Oh, one other thing, if you like to be a part of the movement, share the recorded episodes. I will post a link to a lot of our past episodes if you want to look at them or share them out. Let people know what we're here about and what we're doing. That would be another great one. So thanks, everyone. God bless. Have an amazing week. And we'll see you next week. And let's talk about self-confidence.